You know those couples who hate each other, and you just wonder why they are still together? Why do you even tolerate each other? Couples who mock each other, who embarrass each other. The man we are talking about today was one of those who made jokes like that. He even made jokes about marriage on television, right there on TV, acting as if he regretted being married to his wife. Think about it, on one of the most famous shows in the world, openly making fun of his wife and their marriage. Hello and welcome to True Crime Channel. Let's go back in time a little. Becky and Timothy were a married couple living in Quincy. Everyone called Timothy Tim, and we will call him Tim here too. This town is a very quiet area by the Mississippi River, a place with about 100,000 residents. Nothing really happens in the city, or better said, nothing happens at all, to the point that you might think this is one of the safest places in the world. The couple had known each other before. Most studied at Quincy University. Maybe they liked each other back then, but their dating began after university. About 2 years after graduation, Tim was already in love with Becky. That's understandable, because Becky at that time was very cheerful, happy, and beautiful. The two seemed like a very happy couple. Tim had a distinguished face with a bright, captivating smile that always drew attention. Becky was a woman who took care of herself and tried to be up to date, sometimes wearing her hair long, sometimes brown, with a kind smile. After a few years together, they finally got married and moved to a house in Quincy. It seemed Becky was very happy there because Tim was a responsible man. He had a good job, and they had a beautiful home where they were great hosts when throwing parties. They always had positive energy and were the first people to start dancing on the dance floor. In short, their days passed joyfully, and very soon they realized they wanted to become parents and prepared themselves for this big step. When the children were born, Becky became fully absorbed in raising and caring for them. She resigned from her job at a pharmaceutical company because she wanted to devote all her time to her home and her children. Becky was a very devoted person, and her family was more important to her than anything else. Of course, everyone in her life was important to her. She showed others how grateful she was. Grateful for her family, grateful for her home, grateful for the people in her life. While Becky was with the children, Tim was working and earning the living. He worked in the recycling industry, but at some point, they realized that the money Tim earned was not enough for the family's comfort. So Becky decided not to be a housewife anymore. She went to learn a new job and became a nurse. After completing her course, she unexpectedly became pregnant again and gave birth to their third son. At that time, Becky was working as an ER nurse and was doing her job very well. She was even praised and awarded for her care and kindness toward patients. Meanwhile, Tim tried to find another way to make money by participating in a TV program called Family Feud. This is an American game show where two families compete with each other. They must answer specific questions with the exact answers most people gave in surveys, the most likely answer. If they did well, they could win a great prize and good money. On the show's website, it said you could win up to $110,000 and a family trip to Barbados, which doesn't sound bad at all. For someone like Tim, who was a social and entertaining person, it could be a new experience or even a new path in life. That was exactly what Tim thought, and he wanted to give it his all. The host of the program at that time was Steve Harvey, who many of you surely know. There's even a meme of him. I don't know if you've seen it. He's a very funny host, does his job excellently, and in my opinion, he's a great presenter. So, in 2020, Tim and several members of the Bleefnick family appeared on stage for the show. Tim had dressed very smartly for the occasion. In my opinion, both Tim and Becky looked very well dressed. Tim wore dark blue trousers, a purple bow tie, and a matching pocket square. A large blue and yellow name tag was stuck to his chest. He stood with the other contestants behind the red and yellow podiums, each with a microphone in front. Then Tim had to answer a specific question. What was the biggest mistake you made at your wedding? 100 people had answered this question, and he had to say the most common answer. Tim then turned and said, saying, "I do." The sound of laughter and applause from the audience was loud, but at the same time, there were also boos. Right there, Tim tried to quickly justify himself. Look, we know it's just a game show. The goal is for people to give unusual answers, get attention, provoke reactions. But how can he say something like that to a wife who had raised his 3 children? A wife who had quit her job for the family and later, when needed, went back to a new job to support the family financially, and after all that work, still came home at night to put a hot dinner on the table? How could he say the whole marriage was a mistake and embarrass her so publicly on television? Despite all this, Tim's answer actually ranked second on the list, so even with that rude response, he could still score well and give his family a better chance of winning. In the Fast Money round, Tim scored the last points his family needed. Everyone was very happy. They were now $10,000 richer. They danced, jumped, laughed, and clapped. The other family came over to hug the Bleefnicks and congratulate them. But notice, these scenes would later look very different and much darker. Tim had long been sure that Becky was the one he wanted. He had even told friends that when he was 85, he wanted to sit with Becky in rocking chairs on the porch and talk about the good old days. But everything went another way. The two separated. Tim himself, after 11 years of marriage, filed for divorce, despite his dreams and plans of growing old with Becky. But in Tim's view, the woman he had fallen in love with was no longer the same person. For some time, her personality had changed, but Becky tried to save the relationship. She wanted them to go to marriage counseling together, but Tim refused. It seemed that this divorce process was really bothering him, to the point that his appearance changed. He grew his hair longer. In the eyes of some people, the once handsome and charismatic man no longer wanted to or could take care of himself. When they decided to separate, the 3 children lived with their father. But Becky's home wasn't far away, just a mile's drive, and she could visit the kids. The children were with their father because Becky was still recovering from surgery and was very weak. Only 1 week before their divorce was to be finalized in court. On February 23, 2023, Tim called Becky's father. He asked if he could check on his daughter because he hadn't been able to contact Becky and was a bit worried. Becky's father went and entered his daughter's house on Kentucky Street. He went to the door and looked inside through the window. But unlike recent times, Becky was not sitting on her couch. He called her name, but the house was completely silent. He opened the door and went inside. He searched the house room by room until he found his daughter lying on the bathroom floor. From Becky's appearance and the scene in the bathroom, he knew instantly it was too late and nothing could be done to help her. She had been attacked brutally. There was blood everywhere. The medical examiner said someone had shot her 14 times. The shooter had probably stood over Becky. Becky was only 41 and still had many plans for her life. Who knows? Maybe her divorce could have been a new beginning. Maybe she would have found herself again. Maybe she would have fallen in love again. Started a new life. One of the prosecutors who had to examine this tragic crime scene later said, "You couldn't walk out of that house without being affected." Examining Becky's lifeless body revealed something terrible. The bullets fired at her had not killed her instantly. In fact, none of the 14 shots ended her life right away. She had likely been forced to suffer greatly in her final moments. I asked myself, in those last moments, what was Becky thinking about? Was she thinking of her children's fate, or in her daze, was she looking straight at her killer? In addition to her father, husband, and children, Becky also had a sister named Sarah. Sarah was on vacation when her phone rang. From that moment on, her life was never the same. But she hoped all of it was just a lie. Sarah later said it was all a real nightmare. Tim also seemed shocked that his wife had been killed. True, their relationship wasn't good anymore, but this was horrifying. He shouldn't have lost her this way. She was still the mother of his children. The authorities tried to reconstruct how the crime had happened. They started from the point where the attacker must have entered. A certain window caught their attention, an upstairs window. The killer must have entered through there, into the children's room. They explained the sequence of the crime like this. First, the killer passed by Becky's bedroom window. Investigators found a patio chair outside the house, which the killer had probably used to climb up to the roof and from there reach the upstairs window. Then he broke the window and entered through the children's room. Just imagine, you are asleep in bed, completely unaware, while someone is climbing the wall to come in. The killer did not quietly open Becky's bedroom door. Instead, he broke it down. Becky must have woken up fully to that loud noise and probably tried to run when she realized she was in danger. At about 11:01 p.m., she picked up her phone and called 911. The call lasted only 10 seconds. In her desperate attempt to flee, the phone fell from her hand behind a door, and with it, her last hope was gone. She ran toward the bathroom. At the last moment, she looked back over her shoulder, and right then, the killer shot her 14 times, probably right when Becky was looking directly into his eyes. Some of the bullets were fired when she was already lying on the cold bathroom floor. 14 shots. What kind of burglary is that? 14 shots, and then what? Steal a few pearl necklaces and a wallet? 14 shots is emotional, full of rage. It feels deeply personal. The police were certain this wasn't a robbery. And indeed, nothing had been stolen. So they kept searching the crime scene and found something. There were several suspicious items that could give clues about the killer. For example, a shoe print that likely belonged to the attacker. It wasn't a complete print, but even part of it might help. The police also examined the shell casings again. 9mm shells laying next to Becky's lifeless body. There were also a few small pieces of plastic found, but there were no witnesses. Neighbors heard no sounds and saw nothing. However, one security camera nearby had captured something. A few weeks earlier, Becky's neighbors had installed security cameras after a break-in to their car. One neighbor's camera faced the side of Becky's house. Unfortunately, during the murder, it didn't record anything useful for the police. But when investigators reviewed the footage from the night before, they found something suspicious. It appeared that someone had been around Becky's house 24 hours before the murder. At 1:05 a.m. on February 22nd, the camera captured a person walking toward Becky's back door. About 48 minutes later, that same person seemed to be leaving. Even on Valentine's Day, a few days earlier, similar activity was seen in the videos. That day, Becky's neighbors had noticed the person and texted her to let her know. Becky replied the next morning that she hadn't seen anything and everything was fine, but she had felt like she'd heard noises. A couple of motion sensor lights had also gone on. It's likely the killer had been in and out of Becky's house several times before. Maybe on those earlier occasions, he was planning or carefully mapping his route. The thought that someone is watching your home, waiting for the right moment to act, is terrifying. The police also reviewed footage from other security cameras. They all showed a person riding a bicycle toward Becky's house. This person seemed to be the same one seen on Becky's property. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, this person rode past the cameras and did the same on February 22nd. On February 23rd, just before the murder, the person was seen riding toward Becky's house again. Although the authorities found this extremely suspicious and believed it could be the killer, they couldn't identify who it was. The video quality wasn't good enough to even tell whether the person was male or female. But even though the person's face couldn't be recognized in those videos, Becky's sister immediately had a suspect: Tim, Becky's own husband. While Tim tried to tell everyone how great his relationship with Becky had been, how happy everything was, Sarah, Becky's sister, had seen things differently for a long time. At first, Becky seemed happy, but according to Sarah, after 5 years, their relationship completely broke down. Tim had started showing irritable behavior. He became controlling. Helping out at home no longer crossed his mind. If the house was messy, he would constantly complain. Becky once confided in her close friend that she felt like she was carrying all the weight of life on her shoulders. When Becky went back to study and learn a new job, Tim didn't support her at all. Apparently, he didn't really pay attention to the children either, to the point that Sarah nicknamed Becky a married single mom, meaning that although she was married, she had to do everything alone like a single mother. When speaking to the press, Tim admitted he wasn't happy about Becky wanting to start a new job, but in his view that had nothing to do with control. He said he was just worried that too much stress could harm her. Well, here's a question. If you're worried your wife might get stressed, why don't you help her with the housework? Why don't you take on some of the tasks? According to Tim, this stress was what led to their arguments, even about the kids, and apparently this was the reason for their divorce. Becky's sister didn't believe his words. She said it was all about him. Tim could no longer control their life and relationship. Becky had lost hope and wanted to go her own way. When she got no help from Tim, she wanted to make decisions on her own. But with the divorce came other problems. Court documents showed that they couldn't agree on custody of the children, who they would live with, who would get the house, and how the marital assets would be divided. Around this time, more troubling issues came to light. Sometime after Tim filed for divorce, he seemed to become more aggressive. Becky texted a friend saying he had yelled in her face in front of the kids, shoved her, and thrown household items. She said, "I honestly think Tim has new mental health issues." Every day he's becoming more vengeful and unpredictable. Tim, of course, denied these accusations. He said, "Vengeful toward Becky? She was the one making up rumors and spreading them everywhere, saying I was like this, saying I was an alcoholic." Tim claimed Becky told people these things because she was angry about the divorce. About a year before Becky's death, she sent her sister a frightening message. In it she wrote, "If something ever happens to me, please make sure Tim is the #1 suspect, because he's the only person who would want to hurt me. I'm always afraid he'll suddenly try to harm me, follow me, or take my kids from me, or take me from my kids. He's lied 1,000 times and made himself look like the victim and me the accused, when in reality it's exactly the opposite. The truth is, Becky should have gotten help from an organization that supports victims of domestic violence. But she didn't. Instead, she tried to get a protective order against him because he had repeatedly entered her apartment without permission. Once, during an argument, he took a chainsaw and cut down Becky's favorite tree. Another time, he threatened to harm a family pet. But all of this wasn't enough for the judge. Becky's request for a protective order was denied, which was a tragedy in itself because it tied the hands of the police. When Becky called the police, they could hardly do anything against Tim because there was no restraining order. The only thing the judge did was order Tim to return Becky's gun, a 9mm handgun. But Tim didn't. Investigators found a bicycle near Tim's house, similar to the one seen in the surveillance videos. They immediately got a search warrant and searched Tim's house and car. On the day they searched his home, Tim just stood aside watching. On March 13th, 2023, they put handcuffs on him. Tim's appearance on Family Feud wasn't meaningless to the prosecution. After all, he had practically said in public that his marriage was a mistake. Tim tried to justify himself, saying it wasn't said out of malice or bad intention, that it was just a joke, and that Becky had laughed at the time. Now, the lawyer who had handled Tim's divorce suddenly switched his area of work and wanted to defend Tim in this murder case. He believed Tim was innocent, saying Tim knew how important Becky was to the kids, and he would never do such a thing to her. But Becky had confided in many friends, telling them she was afraid of Tim. She was very worried. Tim's lawyer dismissed these as girlfriend talk, saying they weren't real evidence. There were no photos of bruises, no police complaints, nothing at all. The prosecution disagreed, emphasizing that even if there was no physical violence, there was definitely psychological abuse. In my opinion, that's an important point, because abuse has many forms and not all are visible to the eye. For example, the messages Tim sent to Becky showed that he tried to exert control and power over her through text messages. Tim denied that too, saying he had always tried to give her space and stay out of her life. Finally, on May 23, 2023, the case went to trial. Tim claimed he had witnesses, that he had been caring for his 3 sons, and that the man seen in the surveillance footage was someone else, not the killer the police were looking for. The prosecution argued that the way the killer entered the house was far too planned for a random burglary. There were 3 other windows the burglar could have used, but the killer deliberately entered through the 2nd floor, through an empty room that apparently belonged to the children. And the prosecution said Tim knew that room was empty. But they still couldn't present absolute proof. For example, the murder weapon wasn't found. Tim's clothes showed no trace of Becky's home. The footprint at the scene couldn't be definitively matched to Tim's shoes. Then the prosecution brought up other evidence. There was a fake Facebook profile named John Smith that Tim used. With that profile, an ad had been posted to sell a bicycle similar to the one the suspected killer rode. The prosecution was convinced Tim was the killer of his own wife. Remember those small plastic fragments found at the crime scene? It turned out they came from Aldi shopping bags, and Tim's house was full of them. Aldi is a grocery store chain found in many countries. The theory was that Tim had held a bag over the gun and fired from inside it, maybe to reduce the sound, like a homemade silencer. On one of the last pieces of plastic, they found DNA. They also found other DNA under Becky's fingernails. A specialist said it was possible Tim had participated in this horrific crime, or maybe one of his male relatives. But the defense naturally disagreed, saying that since they had children, the DNA might have belonged to one of the boys, and that most homes had those kinds of plastic bags. Later, in Tim's basement, they found a rod. They couldn't say for sure it was the same rod, but there were marks on Becky's body that could have been made by a rod or a similar object, making it highly possible that Tim had struck her with it. The timing of the murder was also suspicious. How was it that Becky was killed just 1 week before the divorce court date? Just 1 week before she was going to reveal a big family secret in court. Let me tell you what that was. Becky had planned to bring forward certain people in the divorce case to testify that Tim's father had a horrific past, a past full of child sexual abuse, even abuse of a minor within the family itself. For Tim, this would have been disastrous. Becky wanted to reveal this at the final custody hearing. So here's the question. Did Becky have to die because of this? Was revealing this secret really a death sentence for her? It seemed Tim had no intention of losing this divorce case. Becky had written in her filing that Tim had threatened her, saying that if she accused his father of what he'd done, his father might have to commit suicide and it would be her fault. Tim's father denied these accusations, and his lawyer said it was all hearsay with no real evidence. But aside from this, there was also Tim's search history, including how to pry open a door with a crowbar, how to make a homemade silencer for a gun, how to remove gunpowder residue from hands. Just a week before the murder, a truck had been parked in Becky's driveway, belonging to a man Becky had been dating. Tim had tried over 200 times to find the license plate and VIN number of this truck on Google, and he did this shortly after the surveillance footage was recorded of the bicyclist near the truck. But Tim said he'd known about Becky's new relationship for a long time and didn't care at all. In the search of Tim's home, they found a safe containing a gun and several shell casings. Some of these casings matched those from the crime scene, meaning they had been fired from the same gun used in the murder. After 6 days of trial and countless accusations and defenses, it was finally time for the jury to decide whether Tim was guilty or should be set free. During deliberations, Tim was nervous and stressed. It took 4 hours before they returned. 4 hours to decide Tim's fate. Then the verdict was read. We, the jury, find the defendant, Timothy Bleefnick, guilty of first-degree murder. Tim planned to appeal. In an interview, he spoke about his sons. I just want my kids to know that I love them and I miss them. I am innocent. I did not kill their mother, Becky. At the final court session, Becky's family got their chance to speak. Becky's sister asked Tim, "When you climbed through your 12-year-old son's window, did you think of him? When you ran down the hallway and killed his defenseless mother, did you think of your 10-year-old son?" Tim sat there in his orange and white prison uniform, just looking at her. Then the judge spoke. "Mr. Bleefnick, you examined this plan, you prepared it, you practiced it. You entered that house and you shot her. Not once, but 14 times. 1 time, 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, 9 times, 10 times." Tim was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He showed no particular reaction. But the result was that 3 boys lost both their parents. Their mother gone, their father behind bars for life. The boys now live with Becky's parents, who have officially adopted them. Becky's sister has said she learned something from this terrible event. If someone comes to you and says they are afraid, you must take them seriously. You must believe them and help them. In my opinion, that's a very important lesson, because Becky knew how dangerous Tim could be. She truly felt the threat. "If only I could have stopped this tragedy," she said. In my opinion, if the judge had taken her side, if the protective order had been issued, Becky's life might have been saved. Tim might have been too afraid to come near her. Yet again, a judge made a decision that closed off legal protection, and there should be a law that holds such judges and law enforcement accountable for their wrong decisions when tragedies like this happen. Now, Tim still claims he is innocent. But in my view, the evidence is too strong. The Google searches, the shell casings matching the murder weapon, the specific knowledge needed to enter through that window. These things simply cannot be coincidence. I believe Tim committed this crime. Your life partner should lift you up, make you stronger, give you energy, love you, motivate you, not destroy you or insult you, even as a joke. I'm not saying that all couples who tease or joke will one day kill each other. No. But respect is something fundamental, something very important that you deserve. You shouldn't have to beg for respect. It should be a given. And if your partner constantly belittles you, mocks you, and doesn't respect you, then leave that relationship. Of course, this is just a friendly suggestion. But yes, value yourself. Believe that you are a real treasure and deserve only the best. Yes, these are my unfiltered thoughts about all of this. Take care of yourselves. Truly recognize how amazing you are. Look in the mirror and tell yourself, I am great. I am great. I want to be treated well. From the bottom of my heart, I wish that for you. Thank you for watching. Take care of yourselves. Until next time, goodbye.
You know, you sometimes see those couples, the ones who seem to, well, almost despise each other.
Yeah, but they stay together somehow.
Right. And they might mock each other, even, embarrass each other in public sometimes.
Uh-huh.
Well, today we're taking a deep dive into a story where exactly that happened. A public joke, really, that became, well, chillingly prophetic in a really tragic way.
Mm-hmm.
We're heading to Quincy, Illinois. It's a town, maybe 40,000 people, right there on the Mississippi River.
Pretty quiet place usually. Locals apparently say nothing happens at all there.
Exactly, until it does. So our mission with this deep dive is really to unpack the story of Becky and Tim Bleefnick.
And it's more than just a true crime story.
It really is. It gets into these layers of control, this public moment that turned out to be so dark later on, and just the complete breakdown of a marriage. It's quite something.
And it starts, like a lot of these stories, seemingly quite well. Becky and Tim, they met at Quincy University. Didn't really start dating until a couple of years after they graduated, though. But Tim was apparently completely smitten. Becky was described as just cheerful, happy, really beautiful.
And Tim, too, by all accounts, seemed like a great guy, distinguished looking, always had this big, bright smile.
Yeah, and Becky always looked great, kind smile. They really seemed like that perfect couple.
Picture perfect. They got married, nice house in Quincy, known for being, fun, always on the dance floor at parties.
He just brought a lot of energy. And then not long after, they decided to have kids.
Right.
And once the kids came along, Becky just dove right into being a mom. She actually quit her job. She was at a pharmaceutical company.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, poured everything into the home, the family, their 3 sons. That was her whole world, really.
But things changed financially, right? Tim's job, I think it was in recycling.
Yeah, the recycling industry. His income just wasn't quite cutting it anymore to support everyone comfortably.
So Becky, being, devoted but also practical.
She stepped up, went back to school, nursing school, became an ER nurse.
And she was good at it.
Really good. Got praise, even awards for her care, her kindness with patients. She really excelled.
Okay, so while she's thriving as a nurse, Tim decides to try and boost the finances in a different way.
Right. This is where Family Feud comes in. 2020.
The game show.
Yeah. Quirky questions, chance to win some decent money, up to $110,000, I think, plus a trip.
Barbados, wasn't it?
That's it. And Tim, he was outgoing, entertaining, seemed like a perfect fit for that kind of show.
And he looked the part, too. Dressed up really sharp, dark trousers, purple bow tie.
Signature bow tie, apparently.
Yeah.
Matching pocket square, the big name tag. Standing there with Steve Harvey.
Okay, so picture this. He's on national TV, looking charming. And then Steve Harvey asks the question, what was the biggest mistake you made at your wedding? And Tim's answer, for a show known for funny answers, this one was, well, it was something else, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. He just turns right to the camera, doesn't miss a beat, and says clear as day, getting married.
Wow.
Just like that, mocking his own marriage. And, the audience reacted, some laughter, applause.
But also boos, right? I heard there were audible boos.
Oh, yeah. Definitely boos. I mean, it's a game show. Yeah, they want reactions. But to say that on TV about the mother of your children who'd given up her career, then gone back to a tough job.
And was still doing everything at home, putting dinner on the table.
Exactly. The public humiliation for Becky. It must have been just awful.
Just unbelievable. And the crazy thing is, despite how rude it was, his answer actually scored well. It was number 2 on the board.
Shows of the game, I guess.
Right. And the Bleefniks, they went on to win $10,000 in the fast money round.
Yeah, they were celebrating, dancing, jumping around, high-fiving the other family. Looked happy in that moment.
But as our source material notes, looking back now, those scenes would later look very different and much darker.
A huge understatement. Because, Tim had apparently told friends once he pictured them old, 85, sitting on the porch in rocking chairs, talking about the good old days with Becky.
That idyllic picture.
Completely gone. After 11 years married, it was Tim who filed for divorce.
He filed, and his reason?
Claimed Becky was no longer the same person he married.
Huh. Quite a shift. And Becky, did she want the divorce?
No, she actually tried to save it. Suggested marriage counseling.
And Tim.
Refused, flat out. And the whole process, the divorce, it seemed to really take a toll on Tim himself. His appearance changed. People noticed he seemed like he no longer wanted to or could take care of himself.
That's telling. And the kids, where were they living during this?
They ended up living with Tim, mostly because Becky was recovering from surgery around that time, quite weak.
Okay.
But her place was really close, just like a mile away. So she could see the kids regularly. It wasn't like she was cut off.
Got it. But as the divorce dragged on, things got worse.
Much worse. The conflict really escalated. Becky started texting a friend, describing Tim yelling at her, shoving her, even throwing things around the house.
Oh, no.
She wrote, and this is chilling, I honestly think Tim has new mental health issues. Every day he's becoming more vengeful and unpredictable.
And Tim's response to these accusations?
He denied everything. Said Becky was just angry about the divorce and spreading rumors that he was an alcoholic.
This sounds like Like classic gaslighting almost. Psychological abuse.
Exactly. It's that insidious pattern. He frames her fear as anger, her concerns as just rumors. It's a way to isolate the victim, make them doubt themselves, make others doubt them. We see it so often when there isn't, obvious physical evidence.
That's a really important point. It highlights how easily psychological manipulation can be dismissed. And it didn't stop there, did it? It got even more direct, more frightening.
It really did. Tell us about that message Becky sent her sister, the one that just sends a shiver down your spine.
Yeah, this is tough. About a year before she died, Becky sent a message to her sister, Sarah.
And it basically said, if something ever happens to me, please make sure Tim is the #1 suspect.
Wow.
Because he's the only person who would want to hurt me. She explicitly said she was afraid he'd harm her or follow her or try and take the kids away.
So she knew. She felt this deep sense of danger from him.
Clearly. And she didn't just sit on that fear, right? She tried to take action.
Absolutely. She tried to get a protective order.
Okay. What were the grounds?
She reported that Tim had been entering her apartment without permission. Repeatedly.
That's terrifying.
And on one occasion, he apparently took a chainsaw and cut down her favorite tree. He also threatened a family pet.
A chainsaw? That's incredibly aggressive. So did she get the order?
No. The judge denied it.
Why?
Deemed the evidence insufficient, which, as the source points out, effectively tied the hands of the police. It left Becky completely exposed.
That's infuriating. Insufficient evidence for repeated unwanted entry and threats.
And it gets worse. The judge did order Tim to do one thing. Return Becky's 9mm handgun that he had. Okay, so at least that.
He never did. He didn't return the gun.
Unbelievable. The system fails her, and the one small measure ordered isn't even enforced. So, let's fast forward. February 23rd, 2023. Just a week before the divorce was supposed to be finalized.
The timing is crucial. That morning, Tim calls Becky's father. Says he can't reach her. Ask him to check on her.
Okay.
So Becky's dad goes over to her house on Kentucky Street. Looks in a window, doesn't see her. He goes inside. Searches room by room.
And he finds her.
Finds her in the bathroom, on the floor. It was horrific, brutally attacked, blood everywhere.
Oh, God.
The medical examiner later confirmed she'd been shot 14 times.
14
times. And horrifically, none of the shots killed her instantly. The report said she suffered greatly.
14 shots. In her own home. That speaks volumes, doesn't it? The rage involved.
Absolutely. The police knew right away. This wasn't a robbery. Nothing was taken.
No, this was personal, deeply emotional, full of rage. What did they find at the scene initially?
They found a partial shoe print. They found 9mm shell casings confirming the shooting, and also these few small pieces of plastic. Very small.
Plastic. Okay. Any witnesses? Did anyone hear anything?
No witnesses. No neighbors reported hearing gunshots, which is strange with that many shots.
But there was surveillance footage, wasn't there? From a neighbor?
Yes, thankfully. A neighbor had installed a security camera after their car was broken into. And it captured something.
What did it show?
It showed someone walking towards Becky's back door around 1:05 a.m. on February 22nd. That's a full 24 hours before the murder.
Okay, so someone was casing the place.
Seems like it. The person left 48 minutes later. And similar activity was actually seen even earlier on Valentine's Day, February 14th.
Valentine's Day?
Yeah. Becky had actually texted friends that night about hearing noises outside. Her motion sensor lights kept going off. It really suggests the killer might have been in and out multiple times, maybe planning it all out.
Wow. And wasn't there footage of someone on a bicycle, too?
Yes. Other cameras in the area picked up someone riding a bike towards Becky's house on the 14th, the 22nd, and then again on the 23rd, right before the estimated time of the murder.
But they couldn't identify the person.
Frustratingly, no. The video quality just wasn't good enough. Couldn't even tell if it was a man or a woman on the bike.
So no clear ID from the videos. But Becky's sister, Sarah, she had her suspicions immediately, right?
Instantly. While Tim was out there saying they had a good relationship, Sarah was telling a very different story.
What did she say?
She said their relationship completely broke down after about 5 years. She pointed to Tim's irritable behavior, his need for control.
And she had that nickname for Becky.
Right. A married single mom.
Because Tim wasn't supportive.
Didn't support her with a nursing job, didn't help enough with the kids, in Sarah's view. Tim, for his part, claimed he was just worried about Becky's stress levels from work, and that's what caused their arguments and the divorce, not his need for control.
So again, we see these two completely opposing narratives. Her family sees control, he claims concern.
Exactly. And this brings us back to that point about psychological abuse versus physical. Sarah saw Tim losing control as the reason for the breakdown. Tim framed it as Becky changing, making things up. The prosecution later argued that even without clear physical violence, there was definitely psychological abuse. They pointed to controlling text messages.
While the defense tried to brush off Becky's fears.
Yeah, dismissed them as girlfriend talk. So there was no real evidence like bruises or police reports. Which raises that huge question again. Why do we demand physical proof for something as damaging as psychological abuse?
It's a critical question, and as the police dug deeper, the evidence against Tim started to really pile up, didn't it? Starting with how the killer got in.
Right. The prosecution made a strong point here. The killer got in through an upstairs window, used a patio chair to climb onto the roof, then went through a window into an empty room, apparently one of the kids' rooms. The prosecution argued this was way too specific for a random burglar. Someone needed intimate knowledge of the house layout to know that room was empty, that it was the best entry point, knowledge Tim would have had.
That makes sense. And then there was the digital evidence, something about Facebook.
Yeah, this was interesting. They found a fake Facebook profile named John Smith.
Okay.
And Tim had used this fake profile to post an ad selling a bicycle.
A bicycle? Like the one seen in the surveillance footage?
Very similar, according to investigators.
Okay. And what about those plastic fragments found at the scene?
They figured it out. The fragments were from Aldi shopping bags.
Aldi bags, like the grocery store.
Exactly. And apparently Tim's house was just full of them. The theory the police developed was that he'd used an Aldi bag wrapped around the gun.
As a sort of homemade silencer.
Precisely. To muffle the shots. And crucially, they found DNA on one of those plastic pieces.
Whose DNA?
And also under Becky's fingernails. The DNA profile matched Tim, or potentially another close male relative.
Okay, that's big. What did the defense say?
They argued, well, it could be one of the kids' DNA from the bag, and lots of people use Aldi bags, but combined with everything else.
It starts to look pretty damning. Was there anything else physical?
Yes. They found a metal rod in Tim's basement, and the medical examiner noted marks on Becky's body consistent with being struck by a rod or similar object.
So physical assault beyond the gunshots, but the motive, that timing just before the divorce court date seems key.
Absolutely critical, because Becky wasn't just going to court. She was planning to reveal something huge.
What was it?
A big family secret, as the sources put it. She intended to testify about Tim's father.
Okay.
That his father had a horrific past involving alleged child sexual abuse, potentially even within the family.
Oh my God, that would have been
Devastating for Tim. For his reputation, his custody battle, everything. And Becky had apparently documented that Tim had threatened her about it.
Threatened her how?
Allegedly told her that if she revealed this secret, his father might have to commit suicide and it would be her fault.
Wow. That is an incredibly powerful motive right there. Threatening suicide to silence her.
It paints a picture of desperation. And then there's Tim's own computer activity.
The search history. Always the search history. What did they find?
It was pretty explicit. Searches like how to pry open a door with a crowbar.
Wait.
How to make a homemade silencer for a gun.
Just like the Aldi bag theory.
Exactly. And how to remove gunpowder residue from hands.
Chilling. Any other searches?
Yes. He searched over 200 times for the license plate and VIN number of a truck belonging to a man Becky had started dating.
200 times in the week before the murder.
Yes. Shows obsession, premeditation, just a really dark mindset.
And the final piece, the gun itself.
They searched Tim's home, found a safe. Inside that safe was a gun. And crucially, several shell casings.
Let me guess.
They matched. Ballistics confirmed the casings found in the safe were fired from the exact same gun used to kill Becky. The casings from the crime scene matched too.
That's it then? The murder weapon. Found in a safe.
The direct link. Irrefutable.
So it goes to trial. 6 days, I believe.
6 days. And the jury deliberated for about 4 hours. Tim was apparently very nervous waiting.
I bet. And the verdict.
Guilty. The foreman read it out. We, the jury, find the defendant, Timothy Bleefnick, guilty of first-degree murder.
What has Tim said since?
He maintains his innocence, says he plans to appeal. He even did an interview saying, I did not kill their mother, Becky.
But the sentencing. Becky's sister Sarah spoke, didn't she?
She gave an incredibly powerful victim impact statement, directly addressed Tim. Asked him if he thought about his sons when he was climbing through their window when he killed their mother right there in the house.
Just gut-wrenching. And the judge.
The judge didn't hold back either. Pointing to the premeditation, the sheer brutality, said, not once, but 14 times.
And the sentence?
Life in prison. No possibility of parole.
So the boys, they lost their mom, and now their dad is gone for life too. What happened to them?
It's the ultimate tragedy of this. They lost both parents. They're now living with Becky's adopted parents.
It's just heartbreaking. This whole case, it really makes you think about how systems can fail, doesn't it? Especially with the protective order being denied.
Absolutely. It forces us to confront that reality. When the evidence isn't bruises you can photograph, but this pattern of fear, control, psychological abuse, the system often doesn't know what to do. Or worse, it dismisses it.
Like the judge calling it insufficient, tying the police's hands.
Exactly. Becky's story is a terrible reminder that fear itself is real evidence. It's an urgent signal. Her sister Sarah said it best. If someone comes to you and says they are afraid, you must take them seriously.
You have to believe them. You have to try and help.
You really do.
It also just hammers home how vital respect is in a relationship. Not just avoiding physical harm, but basic emotional respect.
Yeah, that foundation.
Yeah.
Your partner, man or woman. They should build you up, support you, give you energy, love.
Motivate you, not tear you down, insult you, even as a supposed joke like on Family Feud.
Right. That baseline level of respect shouldn't be something you have to fight for. It should just be there. If it's not, if you're constantly being belittled or mocked.
That's a huge red flag. A sign to really think hard about that relationship.
Definitely time to reevaluate.
So maybe something for everyone listening to think about today. Value yourself. Know your worth.
Believe you're a treasure, truly, and that you deserve the absolute best from the people closest to you.
Well said. Take care of yourselves out there. And thanks for joining us for this deep dive.